Welcome to the special meeting for the Climate Protection Steering Committee. I'm Robin Ganal, chair of the committee.
Michael Kelly, vice chair for the committee.
Angela Crawford.
Tom Griever.
Bo Marino.
Kristen, are you there? We can't hear you, but okay. Well, hopefully we can get Bridget and Bill's technical issues worked out. I want to thank everybody who's here today to share the presentation about the KC Water biogas contract and kind of give us more information about that. So that's our only agenda topic for today. And then if anyone who's attending from the community has anything they'd like to share, or any thoughts they'd like to share about it, we'll hold some time after the presentation and discussion for some public comment.
Robin, this is Kristen. I'm sorry I couldn't say hello before.
That's okay. Nice to see you. And I see Bridget. Looks like she just joined. Are you there, Bridget? And hopefully we'll get Bill soon. But out of respect for everybody's time, I'll go ahead and just turn it over to our to KC Water to start the presentation for today.
Thank you, Robin, and other members. Blake Anderson, KC Water. I am the Facilities Engineering Division Manager. I was originally the project manager on this, and then Kevin White, who's also on the call, is currently the project manager. So kind of the overall main bullets we're going to be hitting in this presentation. One, we're going to talk a little bit about the wastewater utility service commitments that KC Water meets, some Clean Air Act implications of this contract, and some associating items. The timeline for the biogas contract procurement. We have a rough rate analysis for different alternatives for utilization of biogas, and then a final section where we go through bullet points and big pictures within the Climate Protection Resiliency Plan to discuss this project's alignment with that. So to start with our wastewater service commitments. So KC Water is through utilities. It's a water, wastewater, stormwater utility. Big picture, we're 2,800 miles of water distribution and wastewater collection across the 320 square miles of the city. We have one water treatment plant and several water pump stations. We have 6 wastewater treatment plants, 3 of which are located along the Missouri River, west side near the state line. Blue River, which is basically at 435 and Front Street, and our Birmingham treatment plant, which is in the Birmingham. And then we have 3 smaller plants in the Northland, right at city limits, at Todd Creek, Rocky Branch, and Fishing River. We also have 35 wastewater pump stations, as well as 15 stormwater pump stations that help move water out when the river's high. So big picture. The wastewater utility is regulated by EPA and Missouri Department of Natural Resources under the Clean Water and Clean Air Act. In general, we all use toilets. They're in commercial buildings. They're in residential. We put wastewater into the sewer lateral into the smaller sewer laterals here. We also receive flow from industrial users. If they're large enough, there are significant industrial users that are regulated under our pretreatment ordinance, which is also approved by Council, Missouri Department of Natural Resources, and EPA. That flow is then fed to kind of the local sanitary sewer pipe, fed into major interceptor pipes, and fed to one of our wastewater treatment facilities. Once it gets there, the wastewater is basically pumped up to a higher level so it can gravity flow through the system. We have bar screens that remove sanitary products, trash, debris. In the case of the combined sewer, that can be as odd as 2x4s or in some cases turtles. It's then fed to grit removal. So we remove very high density sand and other material that's abrasives for our pumps and downstream equipment. It helps increase the service life. We then feed that flow to sedimentation tanks, or what is legally referred to as primary treatment. We remove basically all the solids that sink out of that. The remainder redoes most of the solids removed. It's fed to aeration tanks or biotowers in the case of our Blue River plant. We add air there, and we grow bacteria that basically treat the water in the most environmentally and least energy intensive manner. That slurry or mixture is then sent to more settling tanks. We settle out the bacteria from that, and we send it to disinfection, where we basically remove potential pathogens before we pump it and send it out to the river. So what happens with the solids generated out of these two sets of tanks? So we have the basically solids that come in the sewer. We have the bacteria we produce. So we have a project under construction. We'll take those solids and we'll basically put them into a pressure cooker on steroids. Then we take them and put them into a large tank without oxygen present, and then we have bacteria similar to basically a composting process on steroids, where the solids are broken down. The final result of that is basically can't say it's organic fertilizer, but it's basically high organic content fertilizer that can be land applied on farm fields. When we get Class A designation, it will be able to be used in people's gardens. And then there's a gas byproduct from that, which is the biogas that we're talking about in this project. That biogas is primarily methane and CO2 with a decent amount of hydrogen sulfide present as well. So then we have our potential gas cleaning process. Currently, we flare 100% of the biogas produced on site without any treatment for sulfur reduction. So all the sulfur that's produced is turned into sulfur dioxide, which is regulated under the Clean Air Act. And here's a zoom in of the Spire contract and what we would potentially be building. So basically, a gas scrubbing system removes the CO2, sulfur dioxide, also siloxanes, which are really trace compounds, but can cause some problems when the renewable natural gas is combusted, and then that is then pipeline injected, and then we receive whoever's producing it receives revenue generally from the voluntary or the what is referred to as the RIN market. I can get into that in a little more detail later if there's an interest. And we plan on leasing out a portion of the Blue River primary site in orange here to Spire to allow them to produce that. From a discussion of risk management and other issues, leasing out the site made the most sense. And then also in general, I mean, treating biogas is not kind of a core mission of what KC Water does. We provide water, wastewater, and stormwater services, handling biomethane and biogas. I mean, we're used to doing it, but it's not something where we have a huge depth of bench or demand for staffing. And then Clean Air Act implications. So this is public knowledge. So the Blue River facility has received a notice of violation under the Clean Air Act for burning our flare without emission controls for sulfur. So basically we need to put in a sulfur removal system to be in compliance with the Clean Air Act. Our calculations from our consultants say the sulfur dioxide emissions from the Blue River plant can be, after our new project is done, can be up to 78 tons per year. And that is especially important because this area of Jackson County just last year reached attainment for air quality standards for sulfur dioxide and sulfur emissions. And one of the things that's thinking about this contract is that we have the emission controls being provided by a private party instead of using wastewater ratepayer funds for those emissions controls required under the Clean Air Act. One thing I wanted to hit on was basically the source of CO2 for the renewable natural gas produced in this project. For example, we all know, I mean, grass grows, uses CO2. Say sheep or cattle grow, we eat that. We use the toilet I mentioned earlier. That's fed into the sewer, goes to our digesters, produces biogas. This contract would turn that biogas into renewable natural gas, inject it into the pipeline system, and that gas would potentially be used, say, at a fertilizer plant producing nitrogen-based fertilizer. Methane is one of the primary components in the Haber-Bosch process that produces ammonia-based fertilizers. That the ammonia could then be used to grow more crops, and the CO2 release then goes in the atmosphere to then grow more crops as well. So this process is renewable natural gas. It is using only atmospheric and not fossilized carbon. We had our consultant model some scenarios for greenhouse gas emissions, comparing pipeline injection on the left. Total emissions is the darker color. We broke, because the concerns expressed about methane, we have methane only and CO2 equivalents of tons per year, and that's versus the scenario where our biogas system is not upgraded and all of it is flared. As you can see, basically from our baseline business as usual approach, there's a significant reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by this contract. So I wanted to get do some questions we received. I wanted to go into detail on the origin of the biogas contract and the timeline for that. And then Kevin, can you collect questions so I can ask? So the first ones I answer when we get to the end.
Yeah, I've got them.
Thank you, Kevin. So in March of 2009, received our first cost estimates for our larger biosolids project that's currently under construction. The estimate came in at $205 million, which made me virtually have a heart attack, to be frank. We sat down and we're trying to figure out how to get back to our budget of around $150 million. Us and our consultant came up with 41 scope cuts, of which 10 of them were implemented, including cutting gas removal and beneficial use of the biogas from this project. Some of the other things that the project focused on was delaying other non-consent decree capital improvement projects for our wastewater utility. And then one of the bigger, more nuanced ones was making sure that we had a competitive contract and a good competitive bid environment for our main biogas contract. So in May of 2020, we received bids for our biosolids contract. We received our bids at $129 million, which is in our budget, so our overall approach worked. Once that contract was underway, we started working on our biogas procurement contract. That first started in fall of 2021. We put out what was referred to as a request for expressions of interest. So we thought a biogas contract would be useful and that would be basically cost effective for everyone, but we wanted to basically put out a discussion in the market to basically get a market sounding for the biogas contract. We put out for 3 options involving biogas. One would be on-site utilization for combined heat and power, pipeline injection, and construction of a fog food waste receiving facility that would produce additional biogas. This is a common practice in Europe. I've seen a facility in Denmark. I think one of my staff members, Delia, saw one in Denmark as well. It's pretty common out in California as well, and I think Charlotte just built a facility. We also asked to see if anyone was interested in utilizing our on-site incinerator ash. It's very common in Germany to use to basically do beneficial reuse of incinerator ash because of its high phosphorus content. KC Water in particular runs a lot of land, particularly at Birmingham Bottoms. So we put out a feeler to see if anyone would be interested in putting either wind or solar in that area. Received a little bit of interest, but not a huge amount. And also beneficial use of our biosolids produced at the end of our main project. So we received 8 letters of expressions of interest in February of 2022 from Amoresco, Energia, Black & Veatch, CDM Smith, Clark Edgemore put in, team of Reliant and Bartlett and West as well, and Spire also put in. There's extremely strong interest in biogas, particularly on pipeline injection, and there were pretty marginal interest in the other resources Casey Water had, or the other rights Casey Water had to offer. That led in, and during that process, we reached out to OEQ for review and commentary on kind of this general approach. We primarily
I have the submittal, but it's not supplied.
We primarily reached out. We primarily coordinated with Laura Ish, formerly of OEQ, on this, and we advertised our request for qualifications for biogas projects in April of 22. Primarily based around a P3 or a design, build, operate, own and finance approach. We had our public meeting to discuss the project on April 15th, with a strong emphasis to try to coordinate between potential developers and the local minority and women-owned business enterprises, particularly on the construction side. On August 3rd, 2022, we received five statements of qualifications from Amoresco, Energia, NextEra Energy, Reliant, IG, and Spire. We had a selection committee for shortlisting of Director Wes Minder, Erica Taylor from the City Manager Office, Brent Herring, Jeff Martin, and myself. The short list was Energia, NextEra, and Spire. The way it typically Casey Water typically does design build projects is when we do a request for qualifications, we shortlist 3 because we pay stipends to all unsuccessful proposers. We also tend to have the RFP. We tend not want to clutter up our plan room process with RFPs where it's only going to 3 shortlisted firms. So we sent our RFP out on October 20th to provide technical and financial proposals for use of biogas. The RFP was inherently agnostic between renewable natural gas usage on site or pipeline injection. In March of 23, we received 2 proposals. NextEra withdrew after shortlisting. A citywide selection committee kind of mirrored off of our design build committee. Procurement was okay with the approach to have our selection committee be similar to design build. There's not really one for P3s or DBFOMs. That committee was composed of Wes Minder, Director of Water Services, Eric Bunch, Councilman for 4th District, Brett Herring, our wastewater Deputy Director of Operations, Jeff Martin, our engineering officers, and Morgan Hellick, assistant to the city manager. The scoring matrix you can see on our right. The big picture on this is that basically technical score was 100 points, in financial or what cost they're providing to the city was 100, so equal weight between technical competence, the proposers, and price. And then we that committee then reviewed those proposals. The highest technical score was given to Spire at 95 points. Energia received 94. The main factor in the financial score was basically the revenue share of gross sales being offered. Spire offered 23%, Energia 15%. So Spire won on both technical and on financial components. So they were the winner of this procurement process. We spent this summer working on T's and C's for the contract. We went to the TIA committee in early October. A couple weeks ago, and then today we're discussing this with you all with the Climate Protection Steering Committee. So we were able to get a rate analysis from Spire and internally on 2 different options. So option 1 is kind of the Spire contract where we're treating the biogas and then sending the pipeline for Option 2 is cogeneration of heat and electricity on site. So there's a different but lesser amount of gas cleaning, but then we have to construct, then we need typically microturbines or internal combustion engine generators on site that burn that for on-site energy. Current estimated power demand on site would still typically be more than what would be generated from the biogas produced on site. There were some discussions.
Could you just repeat that last point? I'm sorry.
Oh, the last point. So the total energy demands on the Blue River primary site, which is where our biogas project is, has power demands that are greater than would be generated from this potential cogen facility. So we would need to export any power to the grid from this if we were to do this option.
I'm sorry. Say that you'd have to export energy to the grid?
No, we would not have. There would be no need to. There's sufficient power demand on site to fully
Okay.
utilize power generated.
Got it. Okay.
Sorry, I got a lot of slides. I'm trying to move quick, so feel free to interrupt me at any time.
Well, you're our only topic, so you don't have to, to completely rush. But I appreciate you respecting everybody's time. So
If I can save somebody 10 minutes at the end, I'll take it. One question asked at TIO was the basically the size of the population of the areas that would capitalize these projects. Casey Water Sewer utility serves about 600,000 people. That's Casey Mo, as well as some of our wholesale customers, as well as many of our customers. Spires Western Missouri is about 1.5 million. And so I tried to fit it in, Kelly. So this is basically estimated monthly rates for the different options. So option 1, the renewable natural gas project would add about 10 cents to the average Western Missouri bill for Spire. The on-site generation option for Casey Water would add $1.34 to the monthly bill for Casey Water. One of the big reasons for that is, and I'll hit that in 2 slides, sorry. So this is sort of in keeping with the way the wastewater industry as a whole is going. San Francisco is going out for a biogas utilization pipeline injection procurement. San Antonio's has had RNG to pipeline operated by a private firm in place for, I think, a decade now. Phoenix just recently went out with another private firm. Our contract is actually modeled after Phoenix's contract. Newton Creek, which is part of New York City, also utilizes pipeline injection. This is what that, instead of a private entity, it's with their local gas utility. Honolulu also does pipeline injection with their local gas utility. Victor Valley is in California is partnered with a private utility. Rialto in Southern California is with a private entity. Rhode Island's a little weird. They centralize, because it's such a densely populated state. It's my understanding they centralize almost all their biosolids processing in one place, and a private entity handles that. Charlotte's a little unique, and they have a private operator that's doing a food waste digester to produce power. Bio-natural gas, not power. And then finally, Denver Metro. A lot of the project team on this for our consultant also has some strong familiarity with Denver. They currently have a combined heat and power system. Their contract term is up, and they're planning on doing a renewable natural gas procurement. And part of the reason for that is kind of the next slide that I have. So this is Denver. I've kind of, for their decency, I've taken off kind of the scale. But basically, the line in green is basically the payback period for pipeline injection. So basically, if it reaches this line here, that's when the money would be back on it. So for cogen for Denver Water, in a 20-year period, they stayed cash flow negative. So it was a non-profitable project. For Denver Metro, for pipeline injection, it was about three years to get back their invested capital. In this case, they had no private funding. So it seems a little unintuitive, but the main driver behind it is if you're not doing pipeline injection and producing renewable natural gas, you don't really have access to either the voluntary credit markets for carbon trades, or the EPA's renewable fuel standard program, or it's referred to as the RIN program. That's the when we're selling renewable natural gas, the bulk of the money, the bulk of the revenue we receive is from that credit sale. So basically, cogens is run on site. Our revenue just is massively cut. So last chunk to go through is kind of KC Water's alignment with the Climate Protection Resiliency Plan. First, I wanted to mention before the Climate Resiliency Plan was finalized, it was very important to KC Water to be in alignment with it. So we put out a design professional services contract to support that plan. That's our notice to proceed went out on that on April 23. Advertising and getting contract negotiation takes a little bit longer. Currently OEQ has been involved in looking at our scope on this, particularly when Laura Ish was with us. They're invited to all the meetings on this. I think we have some workshops scheduled over the next few months on this. And so, I mean, this is just to indicate, I mean, hey, this plan is important to us, and we're trying to implement it on our side in the most cost-effective and expeditious manner. Next, I feel kind of weird explaining your own plan to you guys, but I will. So, I mean, there's the main plan has kind of has bullets in has main bullets in here. I'm going to hit a couple of those. Then I'm going to go into the short-term implementation plan. For example, strategy E1, transition the grid to renewable energy. So I know we're in the process of trying to convert from no longer using combined cycle natural gas power plants, but this project does produce renewable natural gas. If that is fed to a combined cycle plant, that is helping those particular power plants to be renewable energy in that respect, because as discussed earlier, the carbon is atmospheric and not a fossil fuel. Another goal of this plan is strategy E1.2, so leverage House Bill 734. So Spire is using House Bill 734 in this case to assist their financing on the project. This allows them to recover recover the cost of equipment and facilities for producing and distributing renewable natural gas. Strategy E4.2, develop a program to procure renewable energy at a community scale. So, I mean, this project will produce renewable credits that can be available through the RIN market, as mentioned earlier, renewable identification number, or through the voluntary market. So, basically, this allows us to basically export renewable energy outside of the city. Another item that's available, since this is producing credits, there might be community members or the city itself that wants to lower their overall carbon emissions. They could purchase those credits. So there's the main climate resiliency plan. There's an appendix that is referred to as the short-term implementation plan. That was drafted in finalized in June of 22. So I'll just read a section from the front of this. I mean, this document is intended to be a living document, updated from time to time to reflect new partnerships, shifting roles, and emerging opportunities, following the continuous improvement cycle shown in Figure 1. In 2025, the city should review the emissions reduction impact, the success of the identified option, then choose additional actions from the strategy library, options for middle and long-term actions at the end of this document, or from additional stakeholder engagement. So to hit on one of the major items in this is basically to eliminate pollution disproportionately impacting low-income and historically redline communities. So this blue dot here is the Blue River Treatment Plant. This is the Indian Mound neighborhood adjacent to it. If we are generating a large amount of sulfur dioxide emissions at Blue River, we are obviously having some effect in the neighboring area. Removing those sulfur dioxide emissions will help eliminate pollution in an area that has been historically impacted and redlined. So as referenced before, there's the strategy library and options for mid and long-term actions. So the following actions were identified during planning processes: potential actions, support the strategy implementation in medium term 2023 to 2030 or beyond. As the staff evaluates progress, we can use this library to help develop work plans. So because of Casey Water's commitment to sustainability, we have tried to accelerate some of those options, in particular on biogas utilization. In particular, there's a bullet titled New, Develop Renewable Natural Gas Resource for Strategic End Users. In particular, to support Spire's zero carbon emissions by 2050 pledge through development of renewable natural gas and other carbon reduction strategies. Renewable natural gas development will likely not be able to support all the community's natural gas usage, so should be reserved for difficult to electrify uses like industrial processes such as the ammonia fertilizer I mentioned in my example, emergency power, and unique uses beyond space heating, hot water heating, and cooling. So this project does produce renewable natural gas that can be fed to Spire and help them meet that goal. And as the more detailed goal is to support natural gas development for difficult to electrify uses. So this report does mention there are some industrial processes, particularly the Haber-Bosch process for ammonia fertilizer production that's very difficult to convert over to. That would be hydrogen usage instead of methane production. So this will allow us to continue with that process, lower hanging fruit. Also create a program to offer renewable natural gas. So Spire as a seller of natural gas could elect to sell those credits through a internal program, and then the city and those of the rest of us wouldn't have to go through the administrative burden of setting that up. Spire could also basically use a pass-through through the voluntary credit market as well, also cutting down on administrative burden there. And the final bit of alignment we have is to avoid new biomethane infrastructure construction within the city. So biomethane infrastructure here is basically produced through a byproduct of our treatment plant processes. It's required by the feds, and most of it's already in place, so it fits within that prohibition. And with that, any questions? I went through that fast, so feel free to ask for clarifications. I can help any slide.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I do have some questions, but I'd like to open it up to any other committee members first who may have any thoughts or questions.
Are you picking out the questions, or are you okay with me doing that, Robin?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's see. Here we go. All right, I don't know who, I see Bill is first. So Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, assuming that Spire gets this contract, is it up for renewal every X number of years?
No, this is in keeping with industry standards. This is a 20-year contract. That's just how long it takes. That's how long. I mean, they've been as short as 10, but typically the standard is 20 to allow for the payback for the capital equipment they're putting in place. So I mean, Spire is going to basically, they're going to go out there. They're going to build. I think they're putting in pressure spring absorption system. They're putting in their trailers. They're putting in an interconnection facility. So in order to, if we did a term less than that, we basically have to buy back the residual value of all of that and then apply that to the next proposer.
Thank you.
Blake, is there options for renewal beyond that 20 years though?
The options, I mean, we could potentially do that. It's slightly ambiguous on that. It's slightly ambiguous on it, but I mean, it could be a procurement, it could be a renewal, depending on how things are sitting. I mean, from my point of view, 23% of gross revenue is a pretty darn good cut for one of these deals. So I think we'd also look at kind of the rest of the deals in the overall wastewater market.
Anything else, Bill?
No.
Not okay. I see Tom had his hand raised next.
Hi, thanks, Robin. You had I think it was slide 15 was a slide that showed a pretty impressive reduction in methane and greenhouse gas.
Yeah, total greenhouse. Yep. I'm moving there as quick as I can.
Oh, no worries.
Okay. This is, so one thing to note is this is what my consultant could crunch in time for this. So this is pipeline injection, and this is just flaring it all. So this is not power generation on site, for context. So yeah, the main reason for the reduction on the methane reduction is a large amount because this flare does not work 100% of the time. So when you run a single flare, there's going to be some times when you're discharging basically the methane straight. So that's where the bulk of the difference here versus a leaky pipeline on the left. The greenhouse gas reductions are kind of twofold. One, there's the offsetting. So when we put the pipeline gas in, we're offsetting the carbon emissions from the gas itself elsewhere, as well as I was kind of surprised with this when I was looking at the numbers. The amount of greenhouse gas is produced when you produce conventional natural gas is not a small amount. So that's basically the origin. That's basically where this fairly stark differentiator is.
I see. So it's a replacement essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you pretty much answered my question, I think, but I wondered whether this captures any potential downstream additional emissions or reduction in emissions, or is this only reflect emissions from the wastewater treatment plant itself?
So they basically looked at what the greenhouse gas productions would be with basically a RNG setup, and then what the flare does.
Right.
So
They also did look at the 30 miles of transmission line.
Oh yeah, that's the 180 right there. Yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you.
I'll just ask a follow-up on that. So
Mhm.
it would be nice to know kind of what the emissions from flaring are, just like straight, like not including some sort of replacement of the natural gas, but just like what is the emissions coming out of the flare when it burns?
Kevin, can you take a glance and see if you can find that number? And then if you're comfortable, put it in chat. If not, we can do a reply all to the committee members.
Yeah, so the CO2e for biogas flaring at Blue River, not pipeline injection, is 3,502 CO2e.
And what is
throw
the
that number in
units
chat.
of that? Just
So
what CO
tons per year.
tons?
Yeah,
Tons.
we convert everything to CO2 equivalent. Sorry, I didn't go through the units on the left.
That's okay. Okay, so that's 3,500 tons for just the flaring, and then but you also have the methane that is just released if the flare is not working. So that's what that represents.
Yeah, the methane is included in the total bar here. We just pulled it out separately because there was additional specific concerns about it. So these are not additive.
Okay. All right. So if we were just considering the flare itself, it's 3,500 of CO2 plus 5,208 methane.
First order effects, yes. If we include full cycle, 24,000. Sorry.
Okay. And then how the biogas emissions, does that, I guess one question I have is that assuming any leakage from the RNG facility? Any methane leaks? I guess how did you calculate those CH4 emissions there?
See, this was based on 30 miles of leaky pipeline was how we got to the 180 on here. Kevin,
so it also includes emissions from the upgrading process itself, tail gas emissions, and then leaking from the transmission line. We assumed up to 30 miles of transmission line for that calculation.
And what kind of leak rate did you assume for that?
I have here that they use the CARB Tier 1 simplified CI calculator for biomethane emissions. I'd have to ask them specifically though on that.
Okay, I guess because I asked because one concern I have is when you compare flaring to the process of taking what's being flared and processing it into renewable natural gas, how much is leaking out, and how much does that negate? You know, first of all, I guess you've got emissions that are caused because of the energy used to process this, right?
Yes, I think we're, like I said, I think we're pressure swing absorption. So you have some compressors that produce compressors to compress the gas. And then, yeah, I mean, it's mainly a fairly simple physical chemical process with the pressure swing absorption. And then the CO2 is released out of that. So it's not the most energy intensive process. So.
But you're using some gas-fired boilers or something as part of that process?
I'm talking about the biogas process, not the overall. I mean, so I'm trying to draw a box on the biogas process. If we want to expand it to include, if we want to expand it to be the whole solids handling process or the whole treatment process, like, so that's.
No, I'm just trying to get a handle on I guess my concern is, I want to make sure that the process that, right now it's being flared and sometimes released, and obviously that's not ideal. And you guys are looking for a greener solution, a better solution than that. So I'm just trying to get a handle on if you take that instead of flaring it or venting it and putting it into this RNG process, how much methane leaks out of that process? Because I saw that there's some estimates say that wastewater treatment biogas plants, were found to leak about 7.5% of the methane on average. So that's kind of high. And I was just wondering if that's something that
I wouldn't
considered, or
I mean, well, I mean, from my point of view, when I think biogas leakage, I think safety, to be blunt, because if biogas leaks, it's explosive.
right.
So I mean, 7.5% seems pretty high. I mean, our model emissions have 5% downtime on the flare, so I mean that would be two-thirds of that number. But I mean, in general, we try not to leak anything because it's kind of dangerous.
Well, I guess though this is going to be controlled by Spire, right? Not you guys.
I mean, I think Spire cares about safety as much as us.
Oh, I'm not insinuating they don't care about safety. I'm just saying that, I mean, that gas leaks every step of the way, and no matter kind of what process it is, it seems like. So I'm just trying to get a handle on, are you going to, is the agreement include, monitoring this RNG part for leaks?
I mean, that is not part of the agreement. What I would say is the way we tried to fashion that was Spire pays us based upon, from our point of view, on spec gas, and they have to pay us their revenue from that. And so if they are not, they're incentivized to produce it all, because otherwise they'll have lost revenue.
Right. Okay. So that's not part of the agreement right now.
No, it was not part of our advertised contract.
Okay. I mean, that does concern me a bit because of what, methane, we don't want to create a situation where we're, because of methane leaks, creating a worse situation in terms of emissions. But
I mean, if we have that concern, I would almost rather just have Spire. I would almost rather have Spire crunch and produce the greenhouse gas emissions for us.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I'd have to talk to them in a confidential setting of how they want to manage that risk. I really try not to be super prescriptive with the developers we're working with. I mean, we have the same goal. Okay, we want to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, particularly from fugitive methane emissions. So exactly how to do that through either a pipeline spec or some other methods. I mean, I think I'm not going to come up with it in this meeting right now.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. And did you say that where is it going to be injected into the pipe, into the gas distribution system?
I think there's a fairly large line on Front Street. I mean, sorry, there's a major line on Front Street, and there's a feeder along Century and Hawthorne. I mean, Century and I think Hawthorne to get there. I think I'm pretty sure the interconnect facility is on our Blue River site.
Okay. And can you tell us a little bit more about why, you mentioned that you spoke with Laura Ish last year, and that, and I spoke with Laura about this too, that, she said that she remembers talking with you guys earlier in the process about the options to reuse it on site and the options to partner with nearby industrial or nearby partners like Evergy or Bayer. And so can you just kind of tell us why you decided not to pursue that? Or
I can. I'm going to dance a little bit on. So Evergy was KCP now in the Evergy merger, so they did not indicate that much interest in the project. I think that's indicated by the fact that when we put out our request for expressions of interest and RFQ, they didn't put in. I mean, didn't seem like that was a deal they wanted. With respect to Spire, it really came down to there was a question about who would own and operate the steam lines.
That was with Bear, correct?
That was with Bear. Sorry, thanks, boss. Yeah, so basically, we didn't feel comfortable owning and operating a high pressure steam line that basically went underneath a highway and around railroad tracks and all that. And they didn't feel comfortable owning lines in the public right of way, and we couldn't reach a mutually agreeable risk profile for that. So.
Okay. Do you know what the useful life of this RNG facility is?
I mean, typically capital equipment like this last 20 years. I mean, the instrumentation control is a little more around concrete equipment pads, things like that are usually 50-year lifetime. Most of what's in here. I mean, there's not that many unit process. I mean, there's frankly more unit processes and piece of equipment in the cogen setup than there is for pipeline injection, because you're basically you're purifying the gas usually in one or two steps and then injecting. I mean, like as I mentioned earlier, there's some compressors to move it along. Sometimes a condenser to move out extra water, but most of that material, I mean, finance person probably said, yeah, I mean, 20 years is probably what it's bonded for, maybe 25 at a stretch.
Okay. And so Spire states in the agreement that they plan to add the full costs of designing, building, and operating and maintaining this facility to its rate base. Mm-hmm. So that means that it's going to be Spire customers and Spire West customers that are going to pay for that over time. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, to what extent did that factor in to your guys considering, the other option, it didn't, require as much funds from, or any funding probably from a ratepayer population, right?
I mean, from the wastewater utility ratepayers, one of my jobs is to try to is to try to drop the capital cost for projects and whenever possible, bring in revenue for our three utilities. So, my general, that's the area where I'm given my mandate. Is to basically bring down costs for our water, wastewater, and stormwater utilities. So that was the main consideration in this project.
So yeah, so if this were to be funded, if the construction of this facility were to be funded by KC Water, there would be an impact to ratepayers on it, to the water, or excuse me, the wastewater ratepayers.
Okay. Wait.
Sorry, this is Wes. The other issue too, with the workforce limitations and challenges we're all facing, we're having a hard time filling in pipeline repair and other things. And so, training up and hiring a staff to run and maintain and operate this facility over 20 years is an additional operational cost, an additional capital cost. It's kind of outside of our core business function. So that was another kind of thing that we gave it to staff, is to find a way to handle this with, benefits to long-term O&M costs, just such that, we don't have to add additional staff at a time period where we're about 25% vacant right now with our core business functions.
Michael, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, and I apologize if this question is redundant. I've been having some technical issues on my end. I wanted to confirm with this project, are there still going to be rate increases as a result of this?
So if KC Water does this contract with Spire, we don't anticipate any rate increases from this project outside of our kind of pre-negotiated rate path with City Council.
And can you remind me?
You mean water?
Water and
rates.
wastewater, yes.
And can you remind me how much that agreed amount with City Council was again?
There's a rate increase kind of path we have.
I believe.
Yeah,
I believe I don't have the exact numbers, Michael. We can provide that, but I want to say it's about a 6% increase is what we had told council last go around. But we've got a lot of, like Blake mentioned, we got a lot of assets and a lot of stuff we need to upgrade, and it's limited dollars. So.
Understood. Thank you.
Can you walk me through? I'd like to learn more about what this could potentially cost Spire customers. So I know I saw a couple numbers on your first presentation
on the slide
for the construction costs and the revenue the city makes.
Okay, so this is what I got from Spire is, all Spire is based upon revenue. This is based on the 3-year average RIN market. This contract would add basically 10 cents per monthly bill to Western Missouri Spire users. Customers.
Okay, but if I remember correctly, the construction costs were about
I think around
$19 or $20 million. Is that right?
Yeah, I think the submitted contract utilization plan was for about $20 million. Yes.
And they're going to pay the city 23% of gross sales. Does that mean sales to the ratepayers? Because the ratepayers are the ones that are going to be using it.
It's sales on the RIN market. So basically, they produce renewable natural gas. That's so they're using the RIN market and not the voluntary market. So they produce a therm or whatever, I forget what the units are of RINs. They put that credit out there and sell it, and then we get 23% of the sales of when they sell that RIN into the market.
So,
They're selling credits to
okay,
under the Renewable Fuel Standards program for EPA. And then when they sell that credit, they receive revenue, and we get 23% of that. And that's estimated to be our estimate is at $930,000 per year.
okay. But Spire could also charge customers they will charge customers for the gas, but do we know if they're going to charge a premium for this gas to customers?
Do you want me to speak to that, Blake?
I have no idea. I can't speak for you, so please.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I'm Christy Engeman. No, the customers will not be charged a premium rate because we will be selling the green attributes on the RIN market. We will not be double dipping. And from the sale of those attributes on the market, we will be able to counteract some of the costs for the build out itself. That's how we're able to keep some of that rate increases to a minimal as much as possible.
Do you know about how much of the $20 million, and also, do you know what the O&M costs will be each year?
Yes, and by the way, I do work for Spire. I'm not sure if you caught that. So I'm the manager of sustainability. Yeah.
Thanks for being here.
Yes, absolutely. We do not. I'm sorry. Can you re-ask the question?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a handle because this is going to, this is important to the community to know what this is going to end up costing us, and not just per bill, but kind of the big picture. So
correct.
If we could have a sense of what this, how much you're going to be recovering in total from customers over this 20-year period. So that would include O&M costs and
Correct. What you see, the approximate 10 cents per month, that is over the 20-year term of the contract. That's just not for the interim. And operations are not included in capital costs.
So this is Eric Buselli with Spire. That the 10-cent average monthly rate over the life of the project, that covers the initial capital investment plus the ongoing O&M. And like Blake said, those costs are mitigated by the sales of the RINs. So what you're seeing there is our expected average monthly cost over the life of the project to customers to cover both the capital and then the ongoing O&M over the life of the project, which is 20 years, like Blake said.
And what's the O&M each year expected to be?
Well, it can vary year to year, depending on where it's at in the life of the project. But this is our estimate for what the impacts would be to ratepayers.
I know, but we'd like to know what the big picture is.
That is, I would say, the big picture. There's no hidden anything. That's the life of the project.
I know, but if we are trying to compare apples to apples, we're trying to compare what the costs of the projects are, not just what the monthly bill charged to customers would be. So are you not going to, you don't want to provide the O&M costs, or?
Well, I don't know if we can pull that up right at this moment in the meeting.
Okay.
That wasn't a question that was specifically asked before, but it is included in the total calculations.
And you mentioned that how many customers are in Spire West versus the entire state of Missouri?
I would have to look. Yeah, go ahead, Blake. I would have to look into that one as well. I have the numbers for Spire West, as you see on Blake's slide, but we're not spreading this out over the entire state of Missouri.
So you have more than 1.5 million customers in Missouri?
Correct. Yes. And note, that's population served.
So that's population served, not number of customers.
That is population served.
Number of accounts.
It is not customers. This is population served. We got the numbers because of questions at our previous TIO meeting.
Okay. So how can you spread costs over the population served and not the number of accounts you have?
You spread it among the number of accounts, and the accounts have a certain population equivalent. So I mean, so our wastewater utility, for example, our wastewater utility is estimated at 600,000 people. It's a guess. It's a rough guess, and I think we have 115,000 individual customers plus our wholesale customers. Ours is a little more. So it's a little. So I mean, you do a calc and you estimate it. They're the same thing. It's just in general, I think when you talk with people, total population equivalents are more intuitive than customer numbers.
Well, when we're trying to figure out what the average bill is going to go up or how much costs are spread out over accounts, I mean, if you're, is this that you use this number in the 10-cent calculation?
It was calculated the same for both Spire and KC Water, so that way you could compare apples to apples.
So that's not really only 10 cents for someone's bill, right? It's 10 cents per person, and there could be 5 people in a house, so that would be 50 cents.
This
a
is
bill.
Eric Buselli with Spire. Our customer count that we estimated was 530,000 customers on the west side of the state. And then to the estimated population of folks making up that 530,000 customers is about that 1.5 million.
Okay. Thank you. But you're spreading out the costs over 1.5 million people, not 530,000.
No, it's spread over the customer count only. The
10 cents?
The 530,000 customers, because that's the bill payer is the number of bills is based on our customers. This was just, I think, a graphic to show the relative population being served by Spire Missouri West versus the KC Water Group. And like Blake said, their actual customer count's less than 600,000, but it's just to kind of show the number of people impacted, not necessarily the customers impacted.
Why don't you jump back to that rate slide, Blake, just to
Sorry,
make
thank you.
everyone's clear on that.
Yep.
So the 10 cents is per
bill.
Customer, not per population, correct?
Yes.
Correct. Yep.
Same thing with our $1.34.
Well, another concern I have is we went through a climate planning process. The community was very vocal about not wanting renewable natural gas injected into pipelines as a solution. We recommended using it on site or for hard to electrify uses like heavy fleet vehicles or something like that. And so it just really doesn't sit right with me that this project goes against what the community said they wanted, and now the community is going to have to pay for it for something they don't want. And for something who frankly benefits, environmental benefits in terms of emission reductions seem kind of questionable.
Okay, I'll just make one comment on that is you can't actually use the biogas in fleet or hard to reach industrialized customers unless you clean it up into RNG. It's not usable in the straight biogas form. And I can also address Robin's question earlier.
I think that was the point of our plan, was that it, if we supported the idea of renewable natural gas for those types of purposes, but not for this type of purpose.
Correct. But that's what I'm saying is you can't generate the RNG to use for those purposes unless you actually clean up the biogas. So this is the beneficial use of the biogas that is already being generated and can then be used in those markets that you're speaking of. It can't be used until it's cleaned up through the progress.
But that's not what you're planning to do. You're planning to put it into the, according to the agreement that you've got with KC Water, it says you're planning to use it in pipelines that go to homes and buildings.
Which can then also go to fleet facilities, such that fuel the city buses. So that can also go to the hard to electrify industrial. Just because it's going
Okay.
straight into the pipe, those folks can purchase the RNG off the market, just like anyone else can. What will be going to the residential customers is the gas that will be coming out of the plant.
Right. Yes, but that's what our community spoke up strongly against. Because it doesn't,
Here, and
it doesn't
maybe you
help
could
us,
clarify
it doesn't help
for
us
me.
meet our net zero by 2040 goal. You know, we looked at the different options and pathways to reach net zero by 2040. And the only viable pathway to get there was to green the electricity grid and electrify as much as possible. Adding renewable natural gas into the existing gas supply does not help us achieve that goal. And so it was not included for that reason. So,
So
this is why I have a problem with this, because you're asking the community to pay for something that it said very strongly it did not want. I see another hand raised, and I'm going to go ahead and let that person ask their question. Jacob?
Yeah, thanks. I think that kind of tied back to the question I had in the chat previously, which was, you know, is there anything in this proposed contract or agreement that, you know, has safeguards for those, for the RNG to go towards those end uses that the committee had identified in the past? Or, you know, once it's in the pipeline, is it just sort of trusting that, you know, Spire is gonna work towards those goals that they've stated as well? You know, and then the other piece of that is, you know, this is gonna represent a investment in gas infrastructure, whether it be fossil or RNG on Spire's part. Is there a risk there of this, you know, hampering those efforts to get other residential and commercial customers off of that natural gas service and electrify?
I mean, I would say, so big picture, current wastewater operations north of Berry Road are run off of renewable power, particularly our Todd Creek wastewater plant. As the city goes to fully renewable power, then the basically pumping and other operations throughout our water and wastewater utility will be fundamentally renewable at that point. And then I think the main thing is to think of, like, not what things are now, but in 10 to 20 years, when we've gone through the electrification process and natural gas usage is dropped, it will move inherently to those hard to electrify areas. And we will need some natural gas, particularly renewable natural gas, to fuel those. So if we're providing that for those hard to electrify items, it will inherently go to those hard to electrify items as more and more demand leaves the natural gas system.
Yeah, I guess my concern, if I can take up a little more time, is, you know, if Spire is counting on, you know, spreading the cost of this project out over a certain number of customer base, to finance it. And then we're looking at a scenario where some customers are going to be electrifying and moving off of that. What happens to the cost for those customers that are left behind?
Are you okay with us answering that, Blake?
Go for it. I mean, it's more your bailiwick than mine. I already talked. The last answer was probably borderline for me.
No, you did great. You did great. Eric, you want this one? You want me to take it? Did I lose you?
No, sorry, I was on mute. I mean, you can address it and I can chime in if needed.
Okay, sounds good. So all of this is taken into consideration, right? I mean, we are, we're a regulated utility, so we cannot just, everything that we do has to be approved. And we are not anticipating that the decrease in the amount of usage will go down that much, just based on the industrial nature itself. So that is why, as Blake said, as folks turn to electrification, there will still be those hard to reach customers. And Robin, I'm happy to jump back to one of your questions earlier about what was included in the calculations for the greenhouse gas emissions from the facility. There was a message, or you were questioning whether the actual facility itself was included, and it was. So the whole RNG upgrading process, the tail gas emissions, and any potential leaks from the transmission system itself.
And then I see a couple of questions still left in chat that haven't been answered yet. Do you want me to read those?
Sure.
Okay. This one's from Kelly Gilbert. Did you review emission reduction comparisons when looking at cogen versus pipeline injection, or only cost revenue?
We typically looked at cost and revenue. We didn't do detailed greenhouse gas calcs. We're basically, for KC Water, we're basically a little behind on generating greenhouse gas calcs for our various facilities. We're doing 5 of them right now under the our climate plan. So no.
Okay, and I'll read the next one. I think we may have touched on it, but if Bridget, you want more clarification, happy to give that. Ask, is there someone from Spire here that can touch on rate increases on the call? And then also discuss the possibility of leaks from the RNG process.
Yeah, so I think we covered those, but if there's any more details you'd like, please just let me know.
Okay, and then the last question I see typed in the chat is from Kristen. One concern that I have is that sulfur dioxide is a very serious health hazard for the surrounding neighborhoods. And this project, as I understand it, would eliminate that problem immediately. While the concerns raised by Robin and Michael are valid, I think more people knew of the dangers of sulfur dioxide, they would be in favor of this. Please correct me if I'm wrong about SO2.
I think you're slightly underselling it. It has been a regulated. It's a regulated pollutant under the Clean Air Act. Has been that way since the 70s. We have committed. When you receive a notice of violation, you have to say how you're going to fix it. So we have told the feds we'd fix it and how. If we need to go a different direction, then this contract will need to go a different way, and we'll need to do it very, very quickly. So. Basically, it's this contract, or I need to get a price from whoever's building the Blue River project right now and get a change order in front of council immediately. Basically, so I mean,
that's everything from chat.
Okay. I guess I'd like to, we've been asked to provide our recommendation to City Council. And one thing I would like to ask of the committee, since this is dealing with making a recommendation around whether or not to approve a contract, that we be mindful of any potential conflict of interest any of us might have, or any of us organizations may have with Spire, if there's any financial relationship there. I'd ask that you recuse yourself from voting. But I mean, based on what I have heard today, I'm, like I said, still concerned that we don't have firm costs on what this, what the full cost of this project looks like to customers. I can't tell a whole lot by saying 10 cents per bill. And I'm concerned about the fact that we don't have, I'm concerned about how you've calculated the emissions, honestly. I don't think the graph showing the differences in emissions is, I think it's kind of misleading to compare the replacement costs or the replacement of regular natural gas in those numbers. And so I don't, and I feel like we need to honor what the community wanted. And so I'm troubled that Office of Environmental Quality wasn't part of the selection committee. They seem to not know that you were going in this direction until, less than 2 weeks ago.
Robin,
yeah.
If I could interject just a moment, I saw Bo Moreno had his hand up, and I'd like to give him a chance to say his piece.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Bo.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. One of the things I just want to emphasize for people that aren't, now, while I have no direct contact with this particular project, the safety regulations are through the roof with almost everything industrial we do nowadays. And that's with the IBW, that's with the pipe fitters, that's with anybody in any kind of industrial market, just so you guys know. So I do want to emphasize that we have to follow so many standards from the EPA to everybody else. I mean, it's just, it's ridiculous nowadays. Everything, it isn't, I shouldn't say ridiculous, but it is very stringent, everything that we have to do. So I just want to kind of, not that I'm saying my opinion one way or another on this, I just want you to understand that people aren't in the industry when they're trying to explain all the different protocols and the safety regulations they have to follow, that it is very standard practice throughout the industry. I just wanted to educate people on that. That was basically it.
Thank you for that comment, Bo. I see Dustin Jensen had his hand raised.
Hello, and I'm going to attempt to respond, Robin, in part to OEQ's involvement. I know that Laura, who of course is no longer with the city, was involved at the early stages of this. Andy's not present in order to comment on what he knew about it, but I want to call attention to, there was a debate about preemption, about where the possibility of preemption of strategy might be involved. And back in, and this is something that OEQ would have been aware of back in May of 2022, when there was a resolution that was before council about a balanced energy approach. And this was one that Spire Spire supported, and Councilman O'Neill, I think, was presenting. But at that time, there was a letter that the Environmental Management Commission provided, of course, would have copied OEQ and would have discussed it during commission meetings, where they recommended against the Balanced Energy Resolution number 220442. But in that letter, they also talked about how they would similarly recommend against a blanket ban on, and I'm just going to quote it, on natural gas or renewable natural gas for the similar reasons. And they go ahead to talk about that there may be reasons to promote renewable natural gas for beneficial use. For example, recovery from methane. They were thinking about from landfills in their letter. But I think what I want to point out is that OEQ would have recognized that renewable natural gas would have been an option for the climate protection, the achievement of climate protection. And what I can't quite understand is, if not this project, what would be an example of a safe or beneficial use where renewable natural gas was included? I guess that's the question that it feels like OEQ would have been asking, or would have heard the Environmental Management Commission asking ahead of this project. So even if OEQ wasn't involved in the most recent iteration of reviewing these applications, it would have been thinking, or it would have been a part of conversations about where renewable natural gas does fit in climate action generally. And that's the best I can do to represent where OEQ would have been aware of project strategies like this.
Thanks, Jensen. Oops, I didn't mean to raise my own hand. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Does anyone have any response to Jensen's comments? I guess I would just say, Jensen, I think we mentioned this a bit earlier. I know we're getting close to time, but this topic was discussed in very much depth during the climate planning process. And OEQ was involved in all of those discussions, and so was KC Water. And so this is not the type of project that, we went back and forth on this type of project, and we didn't say that renewable natural gas had no benefits, but reusing it on site at the facility was generally one that was thought of to be a good use of it. Selling it to Spire and injecting it into pipelines and then paying for it by raising rates on customers was absolutely something that we did not include in the plan, because the whole point of, we were very careful to select projects and strategies that did not raise the energy burden on families, but that it could in fact lower the energy burden over time. So I guess I'd like to make a motion that we have a vote today, and I guess I move that we recommend to council to either reject this project or put it on hold while OEQ and can work more closely with KC Water to look at the other options and see if there's one that is better from an environmental perspective, as well as better from not putting a burden on Spire's on other ratepayer bases.
So, okay, so real quick, before we jump to that, Bo, Bridget, each of you can, and feel free to say your comments if you can say them kind of quickly since we are at time. Bo, you can go first since you had your hand up first.
Yeah, so I was just going to clarify, Robin, you had asked earlier, are you talking about like for us to exclude ourselves from the vote, like because I'm part of the IBEW, was that what you're asking? I just want clarification on this.
If IBEW has a financial relationship with Spire, I think that's
we're not tied together, if that's what you're asking. We're not on that project that I know of.
Robin,
right
I'm
now.
not sure that's the test for conflicts anyway.
And that's a little bit, that's why I'm trying to clarify what you're asking.
I guess I thought that was the criteria for conflicts, but if you don't feel that you fall into the criteria for conflicts, then
you are allowed to vote.
Yeah.
Bridget?
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I was just going to ask, because I had issues at the beginning, but were there other projects that KC Water had, or was this the only one?
What do you mean by other projects?
Sorry, were there other options? I think that Robin had kind of just mentioned, like,
you
worked alongside. Sorry, go ahead.
Throughout the process, we kept agnostic about other utilization besides pipeline injection for renewable natural gas. We left it agnostic through proposals. The simple issue is nobody in the wastewater industry is going towards on-site usage right now, except in very weird circumstances, because the amount of revenue you get from the RIN credits when you produce this is so much that it's just completely uneconomical to do anything else. If that answers your question, Bridget. Okay.
Okay. So basically the motion on the table presented by Robin is to recommend either. So okay. So let me make this really clear. So the vote on the table is to recommend that CPSC not endorse this project. Voting no on this would no, there's a better way to do it. Okay. We just simply say vote yes or no in terms of endorsing the project. Yes. Okay. Bo, did you have a comment really quick? Okay. So the motion on the table is to for the CPSC to oppose endorsing this project. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor of opposing this project, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Nay, or aye, nay.
Okay. Wes, I see Wes Minder has his hand raised. Wes?
Good afternoon. I guess one clarification I'm going to need from council, and I guess I'll ask the same question to you all. There's a financial impact to treating this methane. And if the concern is the impact to ratepayers, the question I have is what amount of investment, if this Spire contract does not go through and KC Water is responsible for building the capital outlay and the operation and maintenance, what level of dollar amount is this group comfortable with, doing that? Because as I look at it from a utility management perspective, there's a capital cost and an O&M cost, and where that money gets spent and spread out, a larger customer base is better to all ratepayers. But I think I need some guidance just to get back with staff on that, because there is a financial impact to this. The way the deal it's currently been structured is such that that financial impact does not hit KC Water ratepayers. We get additional revenue to plug back into the system to allow our operation and maintenance costs and reinvestment. And if we have to come up with that amount, then we'll have to cut some other things. So I need guidance on, the sensitivity towards ratepayers, what level of amount is comfortable with the impact to just KC Water.
I don't think that's something that we can answer today. Wes, I think that would need more discussion.
And I guess the follow-up to that is the amount of discussion. Could we get a meeting in 2 weeks, or do we need to go? We've got a biogas facility opening, and I've got a Clean Air Act permit violation, and we need to make some decisions and move forward here pretty fast before that new facility opens. So it's going to take a lot of time if the level of oversight and kind of discussion is where we need to do to get to yes. That's going to take quite a bit of time and commitment.
Understood, Wes. Can we, Robin, Wes, and I, can we follow up offline to figure out maybe a time or something to discuss all of this further so that Wes can address Robin's questions and concerns? Or at least set up a time for the rest of the CPSC to do that?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So, so as it stands, there's currently a recommendation from the CPSC to not endorse this. But in light of the information from Wes, I'm inclined to request a hold on sending that recommendation formally back to council.
Well, I believe council is planning to hear this again on Wednesday at TIO committee. So.
I also see the comment here from Bridget that, because it seems like I've only heard two options during this call.
Yeah, I share their, I guess, concerns too.
Okay. So let's see. Why don't we do this? So they are going to be hearing it this week. Are they hearing it this Wednesday or next Wednesday?
I haven't seen the agenda yet, but they held it for 2 weeks, which would be this Wednesday.
So we need to figure out some other time to be able to discuss this further. Wes, Robin, I will send an email for us to try to schedule some time where we can talk all of this further, and I will include the rest of the CPSC members. Can we do that right now?
Yes.
Wes?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. So I know we are very much after time. I appreciate everyone taking the time to talk about this. Are there any other pressing issues for the CPSC? Okay, then we are adjourned.